Hello, everybody, and welcome to October's Idea Challenge. I'm Barbara Andreatta, and today I'm here with Mark Navarro to talk to you about a community events. For those who are not familiar with the Idea Project, it is an event from the co-working community to the co-working community, and our goal is to introduce into our industry more inclusive, diverse, and equitable and accessible topics. So how it works is that at the beginning of each month, a challenge like this is launched, and then at the end of the month, usually the last Wednesday of the month, we gather together to have a Zoom meeting in order to share our experience and how this month challenge was. To know your time zone, you have to check on our website, which is coworkingidea.org. So without no further ado, may I introduce you to Mark? So what do you do, Mark? And yeah, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. I'm Mark Navarro. I'm a co-working consultant. I'm in this business, in this industry, since late 2011. I have managed several co-working spaces, and right now I do all my time. It's focused on consultancy, and I do some writing for different companies working in the sector. And I have been invited here. I'm together with Barbara to talk about in this case, co-working conferences and how to create content. But we are not only talking about co-working conferences, which they are related to my experience because I'm also the content director of the CWSC, the co-working conference that takes place in Spain, as well as I'm the chief creator of the co-working academy at CU Asia. But what we want to do is to create a challenge in which, using my experience running co-working conferences, translate that into your events, right, Barbara?
Yes, this is our main goal today. So I think that one important thing I would like to ask you, and let's see what you think, is that where do you think we should start when we think about a co-working conference or any kind of conference?
Okay, yeah, we prepared some sort of bullet list to help all the people participating in this challenge. And the first point of this bullet point, we are not going to go through all of them, but that's the first point. It's like think about the theme, what we are talking about. But then number two, it's a little bit tricky because it's what are your goals when designing that talk, when thinking about that talk? What do you want the audience to do after it? Do you want to make them change their mind about a particular topic? Do you want them to improve that area of their, in this case, activity, whatever? If I will be doing the example in the mindset of a co-working conference organizer, right? So, for example, if I if I want to make a technology talk, for example, I may want to let you know that the technology, for example, the price for security cameras have go down really a lot in the last years, and they are much easier to install, for example. So maybe something which was not affordable for small co-working spaces 5 years ago or 4 years ago, right now is really affordable, right? So I may want that to increase the quality of the service, to increase the security of co-working spaces, right? Um, and in many cases, you may think about a topic like in number one, you can think, oh, I want to talk about this, but maybe you fail to find a reason to talk about that. So then maybe the theme is wrong. What do you think about this, Barbara?
Yeah, it might happen that things get trickier there. They get confused, and then at the end of the conference, you talk with people, and you have the feeling that they didn't get your point. So yes, I think that I totally agree with you that when you think about your topic, you also have to bear really in mind which are your goal, not only your goal, but also the people that will come as speaker in order to, yes, to pursue like to follow a common path, yeah, right, to a common goal, which is, yes, super tricky, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, one of the trickiest part for me here is and I would like to ask you is where do you think we should include diversity into this process when we start thinking about the topic, when we think about the goal, both cases, and
Yeah,
yours.
I think, yeah, thanks for the question. It's a tricky one, but at the end, it's very easy to reply. I think that it's not like a topic or it's not like an issue. It's something that must be embedded from moment not zero, but like -1 in the whole event. It's not, for sure, it's not something to consider when you have the whole list of panelists. And then, oh my God, I don't have enough diversity. Let's pump some diversity in that. It's something that you must really care from the very beginning. So I would say that that's the right way to do it. It's like think of, I'm not going to overrepresent certain kind of race, look, age, etc. And for sure, you can tell me, oh, but structures are, I mean, big companies or co-working spaces, whatever, um, usually are not, do not represent the diversity of a community, of a society, right? So it's much more often you find a man on top of a community than a woman, sorry, on top of an organization. Um, but if you keep inviting men, if you keep aiming just at the top of an organization, you are going to make that situation keep on in the time. So we have to play our part as organizers, to represent the whole community. So it's first, think think about this in this way. You should not overrepresent uh, one kind of a speaker in front of the others. So this is, and maybe I'm advancing a lot. So I would say, to reply to your question in a fast way, think before creating the event, not at a certain point.
Yeah, good. Yeah, totally agree with you. And one other thing that I think we should take into consideration when we think about our conference and everything is our audience, the
Mhm.
people who are we're talking to. And in my experience as a uh, community manager in a co-working, what happens is that our community is tend to be quite homogeneous. Where we say is that if the friends are the family you choose, the co-working is is the office you choose. So we found out there is a certain homogeneity in our community. So when we think about event, for me, it comes easier to propose to my community events based on, I mean, based on things that I know they like, that my community likes. And sometimes I feel like there is no diversity, nor in the topic, nor in the content, because we are all geeky and stuff like this. So, which is your approach to the audience in when we organize like big events?
Hmm. Um, yeah, the point is, for example, if we are talking about CWSC, most of our attendees come from Spain, so then it's a bit easier to do that, and we have the same effect that you are mentioning, that you as a local co-working space in Barcelona, having several locations, but in the city, um, you experience, right? It's like, at least people keep choosing co-working space. One of the main reasons it's still location, right? So it will be, your community, it will be built by the people around you. So at some point, I think that in the previous conversation, you talk about the zip code effect, right? And yeah, agreed. I mean, most of your members will came from a certain area. If that area is really diverse, you will have a really diverse community. If that area is not very diverse, for any reason, then your community, it will not be very diverse. Um, if you have for example, a conference like, for example, the CWC in Spain, Maybe in terms of race, for example, and we have been discussing this previously, the biggest group in Barcelona of foreigners are Italians, right? And there's no, I mean, we are different, but we are really close together, Spaniards and Italians, right? But for example, there are other things that you may consider beyond race. And for sure, race is important. Don't get me wrong. But for example, if you are doing a conference or if you have a working space and you have members, you will have different age groups, right? Probably you will have diversity about age. You may have diversity about the language they talk or what's their main language. Um, in case, for example, of a working conference, you may have different locations, small cities and big cities. You can have small companies and big companies inside your working space. You will have different kinds of jobs, probably. You will have, at some cases, different levels of education, different backgrounds in life, and different time. Different length and experience in business. Maybe someone you have someone which is really newbie in business, and someone which is really experienced. And you have to put all those items, all those characteristics, into like a mixer and get a content which works for all of them. Usually in conferences, we create something for the big people, for the big companies. We only look at those big companies because they are examples of success, and we will talk about that later. Um, but that does only represent a part of the pie because there's much more others um, which are not interested into that because maybe they are much smaller and they are not interested into that, or the problems that these spaces have in their cities, it's nothing has nothing to be with the problems you have in a small city, right? So it's know your community, understand what they need, and look beyond the typical attributes. I mean, if you think your community is not very diverse in terms of race, for example, or in terms of, gender, usually in co-working, usually it's quite balanced. It depends, but um, look about, think about other characteristics which differ from one member group to another member group, and try to offer uh, enough content to everyone. So if you keep, for example, offering content for geeks, I think you mentioned, only geeks will be interested in your space because when you make, advertising, social media, posting about that event that may take people from the outside to your working space, um, you will be keeping attracting the same people. So sometimes it's look on the fringe, which keeps together two groups, because working on those fringes, working on those frontiers of groups, will make you have more diversity and more you know maybe taking a new group into your co-working space with different kind of interests, with different characteristics, that it will give you more diversity. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Totally. It's an interesting point of view. It's like I think that we as event creators, we have a role that maybe we are not really aware of, that we are we we can shape, we cannot shape the minds of our coworker, of course, but we can give them new idea. And when we think about an event and think about the panel we are going to have, we are kind of, we have this responsibility in some way to provide to our attendee role model to follow. As you mentioned, the person we present as panelists represent a success story. Yeah. So we have to really think, I think that we really have to embrace this role we have, even though it's not the natural, I will just organize event. No, it's something more deep and that can have more impact in our co-worker or in the attendee of our conference. So yeah, it totally makes sense to make a look at the fringes and see what else there is. And I also think, and I don't know if you agree with me, that if there we cannot really find a lot of differences, we may be in the position to introduce new differences into to our audience, into our co-working space. For example, inviting somebody from outside that has a different profile, that has it is different in any way. As you mentioned, it's not just
Mhm.
race; it's everything, and that person can give us can share his or her experience to the community. So
Mm.
do you think it's something doable, or do you think that when you have a public that pays, as in your case, like the attendees and it's a big conference, you can still do it, or do you think that it's not that easy for you to work?
Yes, it's I mean, physical conferences, people love them because they love to interact each other. And for example, if you have been in the stage, uh, you probably remember that moment when you go down the stage and it's the last session, or if there's a break, some people usually come to you, or even if there's something after that conference, that talk, people come to you and ask you one to one, right? They want to have that time with you, and I think that this kind of contact is what make us work well in society, right? The men and women, it's a it's a social animal, right? And we love that. That does not mean that, especially with the COVID impact and how our minds have changed in this period of time, this does not mean that it's not possible to bring someone digitally, right? I mean, previously we had some experiences of, no, I'm not talking about our conferences, but other conferences that have a short video of a world leader or an industry leader which cannot attend, live. So they have a pre-recorded session. So for sure, it's possible. I would say that I would like to keep the physical part of it because that what drives people. And I think that if you talk to any conference organizer, it will tell you that moving the conference to a digital model for sure has made them sell less tickets. At least it's my experience during these pandemic times. But on the other hand, I think that we can take profit of the situation and take profit of the change that the world has experienced to, for example, get a speaker that otherwise it will be very tough to get. And for example, instead of talking to a sponsor, trying to get a budget to fly someone to your conference, which is it's a tough process and it's difficult if you don't have a really big conference and a big budget. You can have a Zoom call, which is almost free, and have that person interacting with people on a different way, and for sure we have seen examples these months that there are some online shows that, for example, do interviews one attendee in their place, in their city, in their hometown, and having the interviewer in our venue, right? And we can have this conversation, this online conversation live, and maybe having the interviewer live, it will in some way solve part of the problem. But I for sure won't make a full conference like this because I like the physical thing. So yeah, I think that it's something possible. But I would like to say that I would like. It's true that I don't like, to think about diversity in the last moment or during the process, but from the very beginning, I also I also want to make people understand that the first goal is to get someone who has something to talk about. So it's creating good content, creates content that it's exciting, that it's compelling, that will make the people want to commit to improve and to do something with that knowledge. uh, and then you have to match this with diversity, with having and this is the main topic maybe of this talk, of this challenge, is like when you are putting someone in the stage, you are showing an example of success. And if we keep showing white guys, certain age, certain nationality, certain look and feel, we are perpetuating this look of success. And this is not true. We can get someone which is a black fat woman and it's successful. And we should have her in the stage, or an Asian guy which is not working in tech and it's successful. It's about age, it's about gender, it's about race, it's about how they dress, it's about everything. It's like we just can keep showing one single example of success. And I want you to really think about this. If you are making a conference, if you have a working space and you want to make a conference, please open your mind, open your site, and try to understand that it's not about having the more nice guy or nice gal in the stage. It's about having interesting content, and it's about showing also and trying to educate, because what we want to get is a better society at the end, and show those people attending the conference uh, that there are different looks for success, not just a single one.
So we can say that this month's challenge is that everybody should think about where they start to add diversity in their planning process, and maybe think about which kind of role model they presented in the past, and maybe try to do something diverse for the future. Maybe this can be the challenge we launch to our co-working. Or
Yeah, I think that the challenge is it's exactly what you said. I mean, it's for me when creating content, and the challenge we would like to launch, developing a little bit more what you said, it's to uh, and we'll publish that bullet list point, so it will be a help, it will be a guide for you. And for sure, if you have something that you think it can improve, we would love to hear from you, to propose changes to that bullet point list, and I will be really happy to learn from all of you. But the main goal is to think what you want to talk about. It's to create goals for that, to really commit in the quality of the content. It's not like I ask whoever to talk about this and I don't know anything until that person shows up and gives a talk digitally or in person. But you have to check that everything is what you talk to, and there's a guide for doing that. Um, and then you have to think about the whole event, and ask yourself, is this representing my community? Is this interesting to anyone? I am giving options for them to feel represented. And on the other hand, is the image of success I'm showcasing is a single image of success, or is representing different looks of success, different kinds of people who can be successful? So this will be what we are asking you to do.
so sounds like a lot of work to do for this month's challenge. I think you will find more and more also interesting information in the blog post that will be published
Yeah.
together with this video. And I hope, thank you, Mark, for being with me during this session. And see you on, I think it's Wednesday the 27th, for our monthly call. Thank you.
Thank you for all of you who have been attending to this small session. Take a look to the blog post and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.